Angel City FC has been like phenomenally successful, like spectacularly, right? Highest merchandise sales, 19,000 fans a game, biggest kit deal with DoorDash. It's been incredible. I also saw in the SBJ Team of the Year profile that Angel City's accounting for 38% of all NWSL revenue. Can the other clubs emulate what you all have done to start, in effect, getting that number down, right? A healthier league over time probably doesn't have one club making almost 40% of the revenue. What do you think the league as a whole and the other clubs need to do to elevate the NWSL overall?
I think we have a tendency to look at one data point that's a success and then turn it into fear. And we're just on this journey, and it is like happening everywhere. And so I answered specifically, but let's just celebrate that attendance is up throughout the league by tens of percents and hundreds of percents in the US, in England, like all over the place, right? And so there's a few components we think about, but we're on the right side of history and trends, and you're seeing what's happening in Angel City happening in many markets all over the place in the NWSL. Kansas City started by friends of mine, Chris and Angie Long. We all went to college together. I love to say it's the first time the Old Girls Network called me up. Angie called me up and she said, she used my sports nickname, Norty, how do you do this? And how do we do it? And I'm like, let me introduce you to all the people who helped us. Here's our model. And now they're building. It's so cool. They're building the first female football stadium in the world. I just got a stat the other day that it's something like 3% of infrastructure built for sports was built with women using it in mind as a core tenant. What's fascinating, that's right up there with 3% of media representation goes to women's sports. And so I actually texted Chris and Angie today because there's this big like local news segment that my husband saw in Phoenix this weekend around like the last beam and the stadium and what it means. And they're doing it in Kansas City. It's happening in San Diego at Snapdragon. It's been happening in Portland. It happened in Portland for years before for us. And that's where we went to learn. It's happening all over the place. But I'd say the key criteria are key to the Monarch thesis and key to what's happening in the world and key to just what I believe as a person. There is not a single person who could be a great owner and really understands best practices in terms of talent, the environment in which someone should play, practice and training facilities, how to build a supporters group from scratch, which, oh, by the way, is very similar to building and sustaining a consumer community at Urban Spoon or Tinder, which was another company I was involved in getting going at IAC. Very similar practices. On the one hand, it's not rocket science. And on the other hand, open sourcing these practices. And I will get on the phone with anyone credible pending time to help them become an owner, particularly people who like from that market and live and breathe Seattle or Portland or Leeds or Manchester or Marseille, whatever you call it. Because I think the local connectivity is deeply important too. The set of criteria of how you do it is similar. I think it's owners who care, who show up, who are really connected to that community, who have self-awareness around their strengths and weaknesses, really want to build a modern syndicate. I think it's really important to bring in investors who look like your players and your supporters. If you can really build a different kind of team where you challenge core assumptions and you honor core assumptions. I think that's really important. Women's sports gets to build looking at the hundreds of years of history on the men's side and knowing what to replicate and then what to do differently. And then it's making these players feel like professionals and really understanding your stakeholders and your players and your supporters are critical. Having players want to play with you, seeing themselves in ownership, feeling like they're professionals, being transparent when you were like Rome wasn't built in a day. And then when we started building our consumer community, we started with 2 people who were waving a flag in a game that Natalie and Julie and I went to at BMO Stadium saying, bring the NWSL to LA. And we have very specifically and deliberately built that community, built our organization and set it up in the right way in our organization to represent the values of the supporters, because there is tension and conflict between supporters and sponsors. And so that's a very long answer, but the short answer is it's replicatable. We should open source whatever we can. And then you should pay people who are doing work that is sweat equity or real equity that represents different perspectives that may help you build a stronger, better, more valuable cultural institution. And it can be the most purposeful work you find in your life, regardless of your gender, your color, your sexual preference. all of us coming together to do it. And it's just magical.